The thunder that woke the dragon. Raymond the Black Dragon had shiny red eyes. He loved storms. The rumble of the thunder was like a lullaby to him. It always made him sleepy. One night, a big storm came. The thunder was so loud it shook Raymond's cave. His eyes went wide. He felt a funny feeling in his tummy. It wasn't sleepy, it was scary. "Mama," Raymond called out, his voice trembled a little. Soon, Raymond's mother, a beautiful black dragon with kind orange eyes, came into his room. "What is it, little one?" she asked softly. "The thunder, it's too loud," Raymond whimpered, hiding under his wing. Mama Dragon chuckled gently. She nuzzled Raymond with her snout. "Oh, my brave little dragon. It's just the storm. It can't hurt you." She sat beside him. Orange markings appeared at the back of her neck, glowing and lighting up the cave as she began to hum a song, softer than the thunder. "Think of your father," she said. "He's the strongest dragon in all the lands, and he used to be scared of loud noises too." Raymond peeked out from underneath his wing. "Really?" "Really," Mama Dragon said, smiling. "One day, you'll be big and strong, just like him. The thunder won't scare you then. It will just be the sound of the sky singing." She stayed with Raymond. His breath became slow and even. Her once glowing markings now dashed, so as to not wake her little one. The loud thunder still boomed outside, but Raymond wasn't scared anymore. He knew his mama was right. He would be a big and strong dragon one day, and the thunder won't bother him at all. He snuggled deeper into his mother's arms, and finally drifted off to sleep.
Finley Frankenstein. Finley, a little Frankenstein, was absolutely buzzing. It was Halloween, his favorite night of the year. He'd spend weeks meticulously crafting his costume. But not that he really needed one, being a genuine, albeit pint-sized, Frankenstein monster. But he loved the tradition, the feeling of belonging in a world where everyone else was also pretending to be something else. This year, his costume was an extra bolt on his neck, painted of shimmering silver in a carefully frayed lab coat that was 3 sizes too big, making him look adorably disproportionate. His creator, Professor Alistair, a kind old man with spectacles perched perpetually on his nose, chuckled as Finley bounced around the lab. "Finley, my boy, try not to vibrate yourself apart before sundown. We have a lot of trick-or-treating to do." Finley giggled, a sound that was surprisingly tinkle for a creature of his composition. "But Professor, tonight's the night I finally perfect my scare. Last year, little Timmy just offered me a lollipop." Alistair patted Finley's head, the coarse stitch on his scalp surprisingly soft to the touch. "And a very nice lollipop it was, too. Remember, Finley, there's more to Halloween than just scaring. It's about community, about fun, about sweets." Finley nodded. Though his heart was set on a truly magnificent scare, he pictured it, a carefully timed groan, a sudden lurk from behind a bush, perhaps a well-placed brains. He practiced in front of the mirror for hours, trying to get it just right, balance of menace and monster. As dust painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and fiery orange, Finley and Alistair joined the stream of costumed children and their parents. The air crackled with excitement, the scent of autumn leaves mixing with the sugary aroma of candy. Witches cackled, ghosts floated, and superheroes zoomed past. Finley felt a strange warmth bloom in his chest, a feeling he often got when he was surrounded by people enjoying themselves. He tried his best to be scary. He hid behind Mizra's Gabble's prize-winning pumpkin display, waited for a group of teenagers dressed as zombies, and then let out the most girdled. They just laughed and offered him a handful of mini chocolate bars. He tried to loom menacingly at a group of fairies, but they seemed cooed. "Oh, look at the cute little monster," and gave him sparkly stickers. Finley sighed. Maybe he just wasn't cut out for professional scaring. He still had a respectable haul of candy, though, which was a consolation. As they rounded the corner onto Elm Street, the usual vibrant street seemed unusually dark. The elaborate decorations that usually adorned every house were strangely still, their lights unlit. A hush had fallen over the unusually boisterous crowd. "What's going on?" Finley whispered, clutching Alistair's hand. Alistair's brow furrowed. "It seems the power's out." Suddenly, a wail went up from a group of younger children. "I can't see! I'm scared!" Panicked whispers spread through the crowd. "The whole neighborhood is out. It's getting really dark. How are we going to see where we're going?" Finley felt a different kind of buzz now, a nervous fluttering in his chest. He looked at the anxious faces around him, the dwindling enthusiasm, the rising fear. His monstrous heart, usually a steady thrum of repurposed machinery, felt a pang of something akin to sadness. Halloween was being ruined. Professor Alistair, ever the practical one, pulled out a small solar-powered lantern from his bag. It cast a weak glow, barely illuminating their immediate vicinity. "Don't worry, everyone. We'll just have to be extra careful." But extra careful wasn't enough. People were tripping over forgotten pumpkins, bumping into each other, and the younger children were starting to cry in earnest. The magic of Halloween was rapidly dissolving into a chaotic, unlit mess. Finley looked down at his own hands and then at the flickering lantern. He remembered Professor Alistair explaining how his internal workings generated a small but consistent electrical current, enough to power his own reanimated form. He had a vague understanding of how the neighborhood's electricity worked from watching documentaries from the professor. An idea, wild and brilliant, sparked in his reassembled brain. "Professor," he said, his voice surprisingly firm, "I think I can help." Alistair looked at him surprised. "Help how, Finley?" Finley pointed at the giant, rusted transformer box at the end of Elm Street, the one that usually hummed with power, now eerily silent. "The electricity. I have electricity inside me. Maybe I can make it go again." Alistair's eyes widened. "Finley, that's incredibly dangerous. A live transformer, and you're, well, not exactly designed for electrical repairs." "But Professor," Finley insisted, "everyone's scared. Halloween is broken, and I feel like I can do it." He felt a surge of determination, a strange sense of purpose that made his stitches tingle. This wasn't about scaring, this was about making things right. Before Alistair could fully protest, Finley, with a surprising burst of speed, raced towards the transformer box. The crowd gasped, some people yelling for him to stop, others simply too stunned to react. He reached the heavy metal box, feeling the faint hum of the residual energy within. He remembered Professor Alistair showing him how to safely handle his own internal connections for maintenance. It was a leap of faith, a desperate hope. With trembling hands, he pushed against the latch. It was stuck. He pulled harder, his monstrous strength, usually reserved for opening stubborn jars, now focused on this critical task. With a groan of protesting metal, the latch gave way. Inside, a maze of thick cables and glowing circuits. Finley, with a clarity that surprised himself, identified the main power conduit. It was disconnected, dangling uselessly. He knew instinctively what he had to do. He took a deep breath, and with another surge of courage, he reached out his hand, his specially insulated skin, a design feature Alistair had included for unforeseen circumstances, making him somewhat resistant to direct shock. He grabbed the severed cable. The moment his skin touched the rough insulation, a powerful jolt coursed through him. It wasn't painful exactly, but it was intense, making every bolt and stitch in his body vibrate. He could feel his own internal energy system connecting, syncing, amplifying the dormant power of the neighborhood. He gritted his teeth, concentrating all his will, all his Frankensteinian essence, into sending his own spark, his own living electricity into the disconnected circuit. He felt a hum building, growing stronger, like a giant, sleeping beast slowly awakening. Then, with a sudden, magnificent flash of blue light, the entire street erupted. Lights flickered on in every house, illuminating pumpkins, spider webs, and grinning skeletons. The decorative lanterns on the porches glowed, the streetlights hummed back to life, casting their warm, familiar glow. The music from a distant haunted house attraction suddenly swelled. A collective cheer, louder and more joyous than any Finley had ever heard, erupted from the crowd. People clapped, shouted, and embraced. Children who moments before had been on the verge of tears now pointed at the illuminated decorations with renewed delight. Finley stood there for a moment, still connected to the transformer, feeling the immense flow of power, the vibrant energy of the entire neighborhood pulsing through him. He felt invigorated, alive. He slowly disconnected himself, feeling a slight residual tingle in his fingertips. He turned to face the crowd who were now staring at him, not with fear, but with awe. Professor Allister rushed forward, pulling Finley into a tight hug. "My boy, you did it. You actually did it." His voice was choked with emotion. People started to approach, their face beaming. "You saved Halloween!" cried a small witch, holding out a candy apple. "Thank you, little monster," said a pirate, giving him a hearty pat on the shoulder. "We were so scared, but you fixed it," exclaimed the princess. Finley felt a flush spread across his patchwork face, a warmth even stronger than electrical current he had just channeled. He looked at their smiles, their relieved faces, their grateful eyes. He wasn't scary, he was a hero. The feeling was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't the satisfaction of a perfect scare, or the sugar rush from a handful of candy. It was deeper, richer, a more profound sense of belonging and purpose. He had been designed to be a reanimated being, a collection of desperate parts, but in that moment he felt utterly, completely whole. He felt human. The rest of the night was a blur of joy. Finley, instead of trying to scare, found himself leading groups of younger children, showing them the brightest decorations, helping them find lost parents, and even sharing some of his own candy. He walked taller, his shoulders back, and his stitched-together face wearing a genuine, if slightly crooked, smile. Later, as they walked home, the moon high in the sky, casting long dancing shadows, Finley was quieter than usual. "A penny for your thoughts, my little electrician," Allister mused. Finley looked up at him again, his large, curious eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Professor, I didn't scare anyone tonight." Allister chuckled. "No, you certainly didn't. You did something far more important." "I know," Finley said softly, a new understanding dawning in him. "I made them happy, and when we were happy, I felt good inside. Like all my pieces fit together perfectly." He paused, searching for the right words. Like I was really alive, Professor. More than alive, ever." Allister knelt down, pulling Finley into another embrace. "That, my dear Finley, is the most human feeling of all. It's called joy and empathy, and knowing you've made a difference." Finley nestled into Allister's embrace, his stitched heart swelling with warmth that had nothing to do with electricity. He might be a Frankenstein, a creature made of many parts, but tonight, on Halloween, he had discovered the most wonderful part of all, his own humanity. And as he drifted off to sleep, surrounded by his candy haul, he knew that being a hero felt far better than being scary. And that was the best Halloween he could ever ask for.
The Fish and the Gull. Once upon a time, in a big blue ocean, lived a little fish named Kevin. Kevin was a shiny silver fish with big bright eyes. He loved to swim near the big wooden pier. At the pier, Kevin had a very special friend. His friend was a seagull named Louis. Louis was white and fluffy, with long, strong wings. He loved to sit on the pier and watch the waves. Every day, Louis would find pieces of bread that people dropped. He would swoop down and catch them, then bring them to Kevin. "Here you go, Kevin," Louis would say, dropping a crumb into the water. Kevin loved the bread. "Thank you, Louis," he would say, munching happily. But Kevin had a secret wish. He wished he could fly like Louis. "Oh, Louis," he would say, "I wish I could fly up in the sky with you." Louis would look at Kevin and say, "Oh, Kevin, I wish I could swim down in the water with you. It looks so cool and blue." One sunny day, Kevin watched Louis soar high above the pier. He saw Louis glide and dip, and it would look so fun. "If only I had wings," Kevin sighed. Louis, watching Kevin swim, saw him dart and swirl through the water. He saw Kevin's shiny scales shimmer in the sunlight. "If only I had gills," Louis sighed. Then a big wave splashed over the pier. Louis got a little wet. "Brr," he shivered. "I'm glad I don't have to live in the water all the time." Then a big, hungry shark swam near Kevin. Kevin quickly darted under the pier, hiding in the shadows. He saw the shark swim away. "Phew," he said. "I'm glad I can hide under the water." Kevin looked up at Louis, who was drying his feathers in the sun. "Louis," he said, "I'm glad I can swim. It helped me hide from the shark." Louis looked down at Kevin. "Kevin," he said, "I'm glad I can fly. It helped me stay dry from that big wave." They both smiled. Kevin swam in circles, happy to feel the cool water. Louis flapped his wings, happy to feel the warm sun. Kevin said, "Swimming is fun." Louis said, "Flying is fun." They both realized something important. Kevin was good at swimming, and Louis was good at flying. They were both good at being themselves. From that day on, Kevin and Louis still shared bread and watched the waves. But they also shared something else, a happy feeling about who they were. They knew they were best friends.
Priscilla's Close Call. The moon hung heavy in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows across the whispering woods. Inside her cozy stable, Priscilla the pony tossed and turned. A strange, unsettling feeling prickled her. Suddenly, a loud crack shattered the peaceful night. A fiery glow pierced through the stable window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Panic surged through Priscilla. "Fire!" she whined, her voice trembling. The stable door burst open, smoke blowing in. "Run, Priscilla, run!" cried her stable boy, coughing. Priscilla didn't hesitate. She bolted from the stable, hooves pounding against the dirt. The forest was ablaze, a terrifying inferno of crackling flames and choking smoke. Trees groaned and snapped, their leaves turning to ash. Priscilla galloped through the undergrowth, dodging falling branches and leaping over burning logs. The heat was unbearable, scorching her coat. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't stop. She had to escape. She saw a glimmer of hope, a small, winding stream. With a burst of speed, she plunged into the icy water to cool herself off and wash the water over her. Panting and exhausted, she emerged from the stream, her coat dripping. The fire raged on, but she was safe for now. She looked back at the burning forest. Her heart ached for her home. As dawn approached, the fire began to subside. Priscilla, weak but determined, continued to run, searching for help. Finally, she reached the edge of the woods, where she was found by a kind farmer. The farmer took her in, offering her food and shelter. Priscilla, safe and sound, looked back at the charred remains of the whispering woods. She knew that she had faced a terrible danger, but she also knew that she was strong and brave. As she nestled in the soft hay, Priscilla dreamed of a time when the forest would heal and the whispering woods would once again be a place of peace and beauty.
Charles the Easter Bunny. Once upon a time, when the stars were still winking in the sky, A fluffy bunny named Charles was hopping through a quiet town. Charles wasn't just any bunny. He was the Easter bunny. His whiskers twitched with excitement because tonight was a very special night. Charles had a big basket overflowing with colorful eggs, but these weren't just any eggs. Some were painted a beautiful sparkly pink, just the way a sweet little girl named Susan loved them. Others had super cool monster trucks zooming across their shelves because Charles knew a brave little boy named Brett who would be thrilled. Hop, hop, hop went Charles, his big feet padding softly on the grass. He went to Susan's house first. The moon peeked out from behind a cloud as Charles carefully tucked the sparkly pink eggs behind a bright yellow watering can and under a fuzzy green fern in her backyard. "Perfect," he whispered to a sleepy robin perched on a nearby branch. Next, Charles hopped over to Brett's house. He tiptoed past the sleeping gnome statue and hid the monster truck eggs near a big, bumpy oak tree and inside a bright red toy dump truck. "This will be a big surprise," he chuckled to himself. Charles visited lots of other houses too, hiding eggs of all colors and sizes. He made sure every little boy and girl would have fun Easter egg hunting in the morning. When the sun started to peek over the horizon, painting the sky with soft colors, Charles hopped back to his cozy burrow for a little nap. Soon, Susan woke up and peeked out her window. "Oh!" she gasped, her eyes wide with wonder as she spotted the sparkly pink eggs. Brett, too. He woke up and ran outside, shouting with joy when he saw the monster truck eggs. Susan and Brett had so much fun searching for all the hidden treasures in their backyards. Their baskets filled up with colorful eggs and yummy candies. Later that day, Susan and Brett invited their friends over. They showed off all their special eggs and shared all the sweets and treats they had found. Everyone laughed and played together. Then, as the day grew sleepy, Susan and Brett sat down with their families for a big Easter feast. There were yummy sandwiches, colorful salads, and lots of happy chatter. And as the stars began to twinkle again, Susan and Brett, tired but happy, snuggled into their beds, dreaming of fluffy bunnies and colorful eggs.
Mr. Yeast Games. John the Bear's rise to victory. The roar of the crowd hit John the Bear like a tidal wave of pure, happy excitement. It was the sound of the inaugural Yeast Games, the most imaginative pizza-making competition the culinary world had ever seen. The grand prize was a mountain of $5 million worth of ingredients, sugars, and spices, enough to stock his humble den kitchen for a lifetime of baking. John, a massive grizzly with a surprisingly gentle touch when it came to kneading dough, stood along 9 other contestant chefs. There was Chef Reginald, a meticulous badger with a tiny whisk, Isabel, a speedy fox whose pizzas were legendary, and Gorilla Grub, a large, quiet gorilla with a talent for perfectly chopping veggies. A booming, cheerful voice, amplified through giant balloon-covered speakers, announced the host. Mr. Yeast, a friendly jar of active dry yeast with a wonderfully fluffy brown goatee that gleamed under the stadium lights. Welcome, contestants, welcome pizza lovers to the Yeast Games. Standing with a quick-witted second-in-command, Carlos the Gecko. He gave a tiny, bright green wave. Hope your spatulas are ready, because if your pizzas don't rise, neither will your chances. Mr. Yeast boomed. Tonight, you'll be conquering challenges, making alliances, and proving that the truly Beastly can rise to the top. Challenge 1. The Ingredient Gauntlet. Your first challenge, the Ingredient Gauntlet. Your pantry is perfect. You must navigate the obstacle course and retrieve the essential ingredients for your pizza. The catch? You can only carry 1 ingredient at a time, and you have 10 minutes. The obstacles were silly and fun.
A climbing wall made of oversized, soft sponge tiles, a wobbly slide covered in slick rainbow sprinkles, a bouncy path over giant squishy tomato pillows, and a final leap across a chasm filled with flowing ribbons. Chaos erupted, the good kind. Isabella the fox zipped up the sponge wall first. Gorilla Grub just used his strength to move the pillows aside. John, relying on his brute size, carefully scaled the sponge wall, retrieving a large bag of flour. The sprinkle slide was a ride. Chef Reginald, attempting a graceful descent, tumbled into a soft pile of colorful sugar. Carlos snickered. Looks like somebody's getting sweet rolled early. Hope that's not your secret ingredient, Reginald. John, seeing the badger struggling, extended a massive paw. Grab on, he grunted. He helped Reginald slide to safety with a bag of yeast. By the end of the 10 minutes, their individual stations miraculously had enough basic ingredients to begin. Challenge 2. The collaboration crust. Impressive beasts, Mr. Yeast's voice pulsed happily. Now for the collaboration crust. You will be paired into teams of 2. Each team must make one perfect crust using the set of ingredients. But one team member will be blindfolded, and the other can only communicate through whispers. Carlos chirped. Let's see if these big egos can play nice. Remember, too much whispering makes the dough nervous. We don't want that. John was paired with Isabella the fox. I trust your sense of touch, John, as she put the blindfold over his eyes. Guided by Isabella's hushed instructions, John's massive paws moved with surprising dexterity, kneading the dough and feeling for the perfect consistency. He could hear Reginald and Gorilla Grub grunting in frustration nearby. Carlos yelled, "Is that dough or a dinner roll, Gorilla Grub? Can you skip arm day, even for pizza?" Finally, Isabel removed his blindfold. Before him laid a beautifully risen golden brown crust, perfectly rolled. They exchanged a look of shared doughy triumph. Challenge 3. The Topping Tower of Terror. You've proven your individual grit and teamwork, Mr. Yeast gleamed. Now for the ultimate test, the Topping Tower of Terror. You must apply all your toppings, but the workstation is elevated. You will be working on a platform 10 feet off the ground, connected by a bouncy jelly bean bridge. You have 20 minutes. Carlos chimed in. Don't look down, folks, unless you're hungry. That bridge looks a little too tempting to walk on. John didn't like heights, but the bouncy, colorful bridge, while wobbly, was more silly than scary. He carefully climbed up. The platform swayed as he moved, but he used his natural balance and strength. Isabella handed him toppings, and his paws moved with practiced rhythm, arranging the savory sausage, crisp bell peppers, and bubbling mozzarella. He even helped steady Reginald's platform, which wobbled every time the badger put down an olive. It was a teamwork challenge all the way to the end. With seconds to spare, John carefully lowered his fully topped pizza onto the conveyor belt that led directly to a sparkling, cheerful brick oven. A final triumphant clang echoed as the oven door sealed shut. The grand finale. The aroma that filled the arena was heavenly. Mr. Yeast and his 3 friendly food critic judges, the owl, an energetic parrot, and a kind-faced sheep, began the tasting. They loved the complex flavors of Reginald's pie and the fresh, simple goodness of Isabella's. Finally, they came to John's. The owl critic took a bite, her eyes widening. Remarkable! The crust is impossibly light yet chewy. The flavors are harmonious, a true classic, perfectly executed. Mr. Yeast boomed. The winner of the inaugural Mr. Yeast Games and recipient of 5 million ingredients, sugars, and spices is John Bear. The arena erupted in cheers and confetti. John stood there, stunned and overjoyed. Carlos zipped over and landed on John's shoulder. Well, look at you, big guy. You truly rose to the occasion. Bet your den's going to smell amazing now. It hadn't just been about winning. It had been about friendship, fun, and proving that even a simple bear can be a champion chef. John roared, a triumphant, happy sound. His kitchen was about to get the best upgrade ever.
Ben and Tony. Tony the alligator and Ben the crocodile were best friends. They were very different, but they loved doing the same things. Tony had green, bumpy skin and a big, wide smile. Ben had pointy teeth and scales that looked like shiny rocks. Every day, Tony and Ben met at the park. "Hello, Ben," Tony would say, his tail wagging. "Hello, Tony," Ben would reply, his eyes twinkling. First, they played ball. Tony would throw the ball high up in the sky. Ben would snap it out of the air with a big chomp. Then, Ben would roll the ball on the ground, and Tony would kick it with his strong feet. "Goal!" Tony would shout. When they were tired of ball, they hopped on their bikes. Tony's bike was blue, and Ben's bike was red. "Let's go to the city," Tony said. They pedaled down the sidewalk, past tall buildings that reached the sky. "Look, Ben, a bus," Tony pointed. They rode past shops with big, bright windows, and people waved hello. Sometimes the city was noisy, cars honked, and people talked. But Tony and Ben didn't mind. They were happy to be together. They rode their bikes to the big, shiny river. "Let's race," Tony said. "Okay," Ben replied. They pedaled as fast as they could, their tails swishing. Tony went whoosh. Ben went zip. They laughed and laughed. As the sun began to go down, they rode back to the park. The sky was orange and pink. It was time to go home. "Goodbye, Tony," Ben said. "Goodbye, Ben," Tony said. They were both a little sleepy. They went to their beds and closed their eyes. They thought about playing ball and riding bikes in the big, bustling city. Tony dreamed of throwing the ball high in the sky, and Ben dreamed of catching it. They both dreamed about riding their bikes and watching buses drive by. They were happy to have each other, best friends forever, and soon they were fast asleep. John the Bear makes pizza. John the Bear loved pizza. Not just eating pizza, but making it. He had a big, warm kitchen. It smelled like warm bread and yummy tomatoes. Every day, John put on his red apron. He would start to sing, "Pizza, pizza, round and bright, make my tummy feel so right." He danced a little jig as he got to his big bowl. First, he poured flour. Then he added water and a dash of oil. He mixed it all together with his big paws. "Squish, squish, squish," he said, making the dough. Next, John added spices. He had little jars with colorful powders. He put in a pinch of red pepper, a dash of green herbs, and a sprinkle of yellow spice. "Mmm, what a good smell," he said. He rolled the dough flat. He spread the red tomato sauce on top. Then he added cheese, lots of cheese. He put on pepperoni and mushrooms. John put the pizza in the oven. Ding! The timer went off. The pizza was ready. John took out the pizza. It smelled wonderful. He cut it into big slices. He ate a slice. "Mmm," he said, "this is the best pizza ever." John was happy. He loved making pizza. He loved singing and dancing in his kitchen. And he loved eating his delicious pizza.
The Witness. In the heart of a sprawling forest stood an ancient oak tree.
its bark weathered and crumbling, its branches reaching out like long fingers. The old tree had witnessed countless seasons, its roots diving deep into the earth, its leaves rustling like whispers of time. One autumn day, as the leaves turned a fiery color, the old tree dropped an acorn from its outstretched branch. The acorn, small and insignificant, landed on the soft forest floor, nestled among fallen leaves. The old tree watched over the acorn, its roots sensing the tiny life within. Through the changing seasons, the old tree observed the acorn's transformation. In spring, it sprouted a delicate shoot reaching to the sunlight. In the summer, it grew stronger, its leaves unfolding like tiny hands. As the years passed, the old tree watched the sapling grow into a sturdy young tree, its branches reaching towards the sky, its roots anchoring it firmly into the earth. The old tree felt a sense of pride, knowing that it had played a part in the contribution of life. One winter, the old tree's leaves turned brown and withered, falling to the ground like spent petals. Its branches grew brittle, its trunk hollow. The tree knew its time had come. As the first snowfall blanketed the forest, the old tree's roots loosened their grip on the earth, and it felt a gentle thud, its branches forming a protective shelter around the young tree. The old tree's life cycle had come to an end, but its legacy lived on in the young tree that it had nurtured. The young tree, now strong and resilient, stood tall, a testament to the enduring power of life.
Grandma Sydney's kindness. In a cozy little cottage, nestled amongst rolling hills, lived a grandma sheep named Sydney. Sydney was known for her soft, fluffy wool, but she was even more famous for her knitting. She could knit all sorts of things, from cozy blankets to warm sweaters and sturdy socks. One crisp winter morning, Sydney set off for the market, her basket overflowing with her knitted creations. As she walked along the winding path, she heard the chorus of snorts and squeals. Looking ahead, she saw a family of pigs shivering in the cold. "Oh dear," Sydney said to herself. "Those poor pigs must be freezing." Sydney quickly made her way to the pigs and offered them some warm blankets. The pigs were so grateful for the warmth that they invited Sydney to their cozy barn for a cup of hot cocoa. As Sydney sipped her cocoa, she noticed that the pigs were wearing thin, tattered clothes. She knew that they would need something warmer to keep them cozy in the winter weather. The next day, Sydney returned to the barn with a surprise. She had knitted each pig a warm, woolly sweater with their favorite color. The pigs were overjoyed and thanked Sydney for her kindness. From that day on, Sydney and the pigs became the best of friends. Sydney would often visit the pigs, bringing them warm treats and sharing stories. And whenever the weather turned cold, the pigs would remember Sydney's kindness and the warm sweaters that she had knitted for them. Lazy Thomas. Zelda the goose was a very busy manager. She worked at the Berry Big Market, a grocery store full of yummy fruits and vegetables. Zelda wore a tiny blue hat and carried a clipboard. "Honk honk," she said, checking all the shelves. One of Zelda's helpers was Thomas the raccoon. Thomas was very sleepy. He liked to nap a lot. He would sleep behind the big bag of potatoes. He would sleep under the piles of apples. He would even sleep in the big cart of carrots. "Thomas," Zelda said, her voice a little loud, "the customers need help. We need to put the bananas on the shelf." Thomas yawned a big yawn. "Just give me 5 more minutes, Zelda," he mumbled, closing his eyes. One day, a big rush came to the Berry Big Market. Many animals came to buy food. There were rabbits buying carrots, bears buying berries, and squirrels buying nuts. The shelves were empty. Zelda was very busy. "Thomas, Thomas, we need help," she honked. But Thomas was fast asleep behind a big box of oranges. Zelda tried to move the heavy boxes herself. She tried to fill the shelves. She was very tired. The customers waited, and they were getting a little grumpy. Finally, a little mouse named Millie said, "Zelda, you look tired. Can I help?" Zelda smiled. "Oh, Millie, that would be wonderful." Millie, even though she was small, helped move the apples. She helped put the carrots in the basket. Other animals saw Millie helping, and they began to help too. Thomas woke up. He saw all the animals working hard. He saw Zelda smile. He saw the happy customers. He felt a little bit silly. He had been sleeping while everyone else worked. "Zelda," Thomas said, his voice small. "Can I help too?" Zelda smiled. "Of course, Thomas. We need you to put the bananas on the shelf." Thomas worked hard. He carried the bananas. He stacked them neatly. He helped the customers find their favorite foods. When the day was over, the Berry Big Market was clean and full. The customers were happy. Zelda said, "Thomas, thank you for helping. You did a good job." Thomas smiled. "I learned that sleeping is not as fun as helping," he said. "And it makes everyone happy when we all pitch in." From that day on, Thomas the raccoon was no longer sleepy. He was a helpful and hard-working helper at the Berry Big Market. He learned that helping made him feel good, and it made everyone else happy too. And Zelda the goose was very proud of her helpful friend.
Queen Ant. The sun shone brightly on the anthill. Inside, tiny ants scurried about. "We must gather food," shouted the Queen Ant. "Winter is coming and we need to be strong." The worker ants marched out in long lines. "We'll find the sweetest berries," chirped one, "and the juiciest seeds," said another. They worked all day, carrying juicy berries and tiny seeds back to the anthill. The Queen Ant watched proudly as the piles of food grew taller. "You are working so hard," she praised. "Soon I will have many more eggs. We will have so many more brothers and sisters." The worker ants smiled. They loved their queen and wanted to make her happy. They worked harder than ever. Their tiny legs carried heavy loads. Winter arrived, bringing cold winds and snow. But inside the anthill, it was warm and cozy. The worker ants shared the food they had gathered, keeping everyone strong and healthy. The Queen Ant, surrounded by her loyal workers, began to lay eggs. Soon the anthill was filled with tiny ant babies. They grew bigger and stronger every day, ready to help their colony grow into a mega colony. And so the colony thrived thanks to the hard work of the worker ants and the wise leadership of their queen.
No flame, no fear. Flicker's dragon tale. In a valley, surrounded by many trees, there lived a small dragon named Flicker. Flicker was a curious and gentle creature, with beautiful blue scales and bright green eyes that sparkled like stars. He loved exploring the lush meadows, chasing butterflies, and collecting shiny pebbles. But there was always one thing about Flicker that made him feel different from the other dragons. All the other dragons in the valley could breathe fire, their flames dancing and leaping as they soared through the sky. But Flicker, no matter how hard he tried, could only breathe soft, warm puffs of air. He felt disappointed and wondered if there was something wrong with him. One day, Flicker was playing near the edge of the valley when he heard a soft whimper. He followed the sound and found a small, fluffy rabbit trapped in a thorny bush. The rabbit was crying and scared, and Flicker's heart went out to him. Flicker tried to reach the rabbit, but the thorns were sharp and painful. He remembered his warm breath and decided to try it. He puffed gently on the thorns, and to his surprise, they withered away, freeing the rabbit. The rabbit was overjoyed and thanked Flicker for his help. Flicker smiled. feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with fire. He realized that his breath, though not fiery, would still be useful and comforting. From that day on, Flicker used his breath to help others. He warmed chilled berries for his friends, he dried their wings after a rainstorm, and he even helped a lost bird find his way home. He discovered that his breath was a source of warmth and kindness, just as powerful as fire. One day, as Flicker was playing with his friends, a mischievous imp set a trap. Intending to scare the dragons, the imp lit a pile of dry leaves, and soon the flames were licking at the edge of the valley. The other dragons panicked, their fiery breath unable to extinguish the flames, but Flicker remained calm. He remembered how his breath had helped the rabbit, and he knew he could help now. Flicker gathered up his friends and instructed them to form a circle around the fire. Then he began to breathe, his puffs of warm air joining together to create a gentle breeze. The breeze blew soft on the flames, fanning them out and eventually extinguishing them. The dragons cheered, amazed at Flicker's unique ability. They realized that Flicker's breath was just as powerful as their fire, and they embraced him as one of their own. Flicker learned that being different wasn't something to be ashamed of. His breath, though not fiery, was a source of warmth and kindness, and it made him special. He continued to use his breath to help others, spreading joy and comfort throughout the valley. And as he drifted up to sleep, he smiled, knowing that his breath, like a gentle lullaby, was a gift for the world.
Raiden's magical carrots. Raiden the Rabbit Wizard wasn't your typical wizard. He didn't wear pointy hats or flowy robes. Instead, he sported a pair of bright blue spectacles and a waistcoat covered in embroidered carrots. His trusty weapon wasn't a wand, but a magical carrot staff named Camden. Camden, surprisingly, had a face carved into the top and could talk, though mostly through vegetable puns. One crisp autumn morning, a sly fox named Sylvia slinked into the peaceful carrot patch where Raiden lived. Sylvia had her eye on the plump, juicy carrots, dreaming of a grand carrot feast. "Well, well," she purred, her voice like honeyed poison. "What have we here? A wizard and a carrot?" Camden the carrot staff wiggled his leafy top. "I'll have you know, I'm a very important carrot, and you're trespassing." Raiden adjusted his spectacles. "Indeed, these carrots are protected by ancient magic. You'd best be on your way, Sylvia." Sylvia chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. "Magic, you say? I'm not afraid of a few tricks." She lunged, trying to snatch a particularly large carrot. "Carrot blast!" Raiden cried, swinging Camden. A burst of orange energy shot from the staff, sending Sylvia tumbling backward. "Ouch!" she yelped, rubbing her nose. "So you want to play rough?" This was the first exchange. Sylvia, undeterred, returned the next day with a cunning plan. She'd brought a bag of shiny trinkets, hoping to distract Raiden and Camden. "Look!" she cried, scattering the trinkets across the carrot patch. "Shiny, sparkly, won't you trade me a few carrots for these lovely treasures?" Raiden squinted at the trinkets. "Those are just bits of glass and metal," he said. "Our carrots are far more valuable. They provide nourishment, and well, they're delicious." Camden added, "Yeah, they're beautiful," Sylvia growled. This wasn't working. She tried a different tactic. She started telling sad stories, hoping to gain their sympathy. "Oh, I'm so hungry," she wailed, wiping away imaginary tears. "I haven't eaten in days. Just one little carrot would mean the world to me." Raiden looked at her with a kind but firm expression. "We understand you're hungry, Sylvia, but stealing isn't the answer. Perhaps we can offer you some carrot soup. It's quite filling." Sylvia's fake tears dried up. This was the second exchange, and she was getting nowhere. On the third day, Sylvia came armed with a net. She planned to trap Raiden and Camden, and then help herself to all the carrots she wanted. She crept through the carrot rows, carefully laying her trap, but Camden, with his excellent vegetable vision, spotted her. "Wizard Raiden, she's trying to ensnare us," he warned. "Not on my watch," Raiden declared. He twirled Camden above his head, creating a whirlwind of carrot leaves. The leaves swirled around Sylvia, tangling her in her own net. "Oh, bother," she exclaimed, struggling to free herself. Raiden approached her, Camden at his side. "Sylvia," he said gently, "we don't want to hurt you, but you must understand that these carrots are important to us. We use them for good, for making healthy potions and delicious meals." Sylvia, finally realizing she was outmatched, sighed. All right, she admitted. "I give up." Raiden smiled. "Good. Now how about that carrot soup?" And so Sylvia, instead of stealing carrots, joined Raiden and Camden for a warm bowl of soup. She learned that day that kindness and a talking carrot staff were far more powerful than any sly trick. And that was the final exchange. A peaceful and delicious ending to a carrot-filled adventure.
Cardigan and Flicker, the saviors of the valley. Cardigan the flower dragon, with scales the color of moss after a spring rain, and horns that gleamed like polished gold, hummed a gentle tune as she tended to her garden. Her breath, instead of fire, coaxed forth blossoms of every imaginable hue. Roses unfurled in velvety reds, lilies stood tall and white, and tiny forget-me-nots carpeted the ground in a sea of blue. Nearby, a small blue dragon with wide, worried eyes watched her. This was Flicker, and unlike the other young dragons in the Whispering Valley, he couldn't breathe fire. Instead, when he tried, only puffs of shimmering, harmless smoke would emerge, often smelling faintly of blueberries. The other young dragons sometimes teased him, calling him Flicker the Fizzle, but Cardigan was always kind. "Good morning, Flicker," Cardigan rumbled, her voice like the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. A sunflower, taller than Flicker, turned his face towards the sound. "Good morning, Cardigan," Flicker mumbled, kicking a loose pebble with his claw. The air smelled smoky again. Cardigan's horns dimmed slightly. For weeks now, strange, uncontrolled fires had been breaking out across the valley. They weren't the usual playful sparks of young dragons learning to breathe fire. These were wild and destructive, leaving patches of scorched earth and frightened creatures in their wake. The older dragons had tried everything, roaring warnings, creating windstorms to extinguish the flames, but the fires kept returning. "It's that pesky imp again, I reckon." Cardigan sighed, her nose twitching with annoyance, always causing trouble. The imp was a shadowy, mischievous creature that delighted in chaos. No one had ever seen it clearly, but its presence was always marked by the sudden, inexplicable outbursts of fire. Do you think we could do something about it?" Flicker asked hesitantly, his blue scales seeming to dim with doubt. Cardigan looked at the small dragon, her kind eyes filled with warmth. "Alone? Perhaps not. But together, Flicker, we might just have a chance." And so, the unlikely duo set off, Cardigan, with her knowledge of the valley and her calming presence, and Flicker, small and nimble, with a heart full of courage despite his lack of fire. Their first stop was the Whispering Woods, where a particularly nasty fire had recently swept through, leaving behind blackened trees and frightened squirrels. They found Harold, an old grumpy badger whose burrow had been narrowly sparred.
"That horrid imp appeared like a shadow, and then poof, flames everywhere."
"Did you see anything else, Harold?" Cardigan asked gently, coaxing a patch of clover to bloom near the badger's den. Harold squinted.
"Just a faint smell of something sour, like unripe berries, right before the fire started."
Flicker's ears perked up. "Sour berries?" I've smelt that before. He remembered the time near the craggy peaks when he stumbled upon a patch of strange, pungent berries. Their next clue came from a family of field mice, whose meadow had been threatened. The mother mouse, her whiskers trembling, described a fleeting glimpse of a dark shape darting away just as the flames erupted. It moved like smoke, but angrier, she squeaked. Cardigan and Flicker followed the trail of subtle clues. The lingering sour scent, the direction the shadow figure had fled. Their journey led them towards the shadowy crags, a jagged and forebodying part of the valley that most dragons avoid. As they ventured deeper into the crags, the air grew heavy and the sour smell intensified. They finally reached a narrow crevice. Hiding behind a curtain of thorny vines, a faint, flickering light emanated from within. "This must be it," Cardigan whispered, her golden horns glowing softly. Flicker felt a tremor of fear, but he stood his ground beside his friend. "What do we do?" he squeaked. Cardigan thought for a moment, her brows furrowed. "The imp seems to thrive on chaos and fear. My flowers bringing peace and calm, but they can't reach it in this darkness." Your smoke, Flicker. It's not fire, but it's disorienting, isn't it?" Flicker looked surprised. "Disorienting?" "Yes," Cardigan explained. "When you puff it out, it shimmers and obscures vision for a moment. Maybe, just maybe, if we combine our strengths..." Taking a deep breath, Cardigan gently pushed aside the vines. The crevice opened into a small, damp cavern. In the center, a shadowy figure writhed and chuckled, small flickers of dark fire dancing around it. The imp. As soon as it saw them, the imp shrieked and sent a wave of dark flames towards them. Cardigan quickly exhaled a cloud of bluebells, their sweet scent momentarily confusing the imp. "Now, Flicker!" Cardigan urged. Flicker, his heart pounding, took a deep breath and puffed out a large cloud of his shimmering blueberry-scented smoke. It wasn't fire, but it billowed outwards, a swirling, disorienting haze that enveloped the imp. The imp sputtered and swatted at the smoke, its shadowy form flickering erratically. It clearly wasn't used to anything that wasn't destructive fire. Cardigan seized the opportunity. She focused all her will, and a cascade of luminous white lilies bloomed around the imp, their gentle light pushing back the darkness. The imp shrieked again, a sound of pure frustration. It recoiled from the light and the disorienting smoke, its shadowy form shrinking and fading. The sour smell weakened, and the dark flames flickered and died. Slowly the smoke cleared, and the lilies bathed the cavern in a soft glow. The imp was gone. Cardigan and Flicker looked at each other, a sense of relief washing over them. They had done it. They returned to the Whispering Valley, and as they did, the air felt cleaner, lighter. The fear that had gripped the valley began to dissipate. The other dragons who had been worried sick greeted them with cheers and astonished looks. You banished the imp?" a young red dragon stammered, looking at Flicker with a newfound respect. Cardigan smiled. "We did it together. Flicker's unique puff was surprisingly effective." Flicker puffed out a small cloud of blueberry smoke, this time not out of nervousness, but with a hint of pride, with other younger dragons watching in fascination. From that day on, the fire stopped. The Whispering Valley returned to its peaceful rhythm. Flicker was no longer Flicker the Fizzle. He was Flicker the Brave, the dragon who used his unique ability to save their home, and Cardigan the gentle flower dragon, who was admired even more for her wisdom and her belief in her little friend. They had shown everyone that kindness and cleverness, combined with a brave heart, could overcome even the most fiery of challenges. And sometimes, the things that make you different are the very things that make you special.
Missy's Grubby Neighbor. Missy the rat shivered, pulling her tail tighter around her. "Mama," she whispered, "I'm scared. Mr. Hoots hooted so loud last night, I thought the shoe would fly off the shelf." Her mother, a wise old rat with a long silvery whisker, sighed. "Mr. Hoots is a grumpy old owl, Missy. He's been grumpy ever since he lost his favorite feather." Missy knew Mr. Hoots. He lived in an old oak tree outside their window. His eyes like two glowing moons in the night. He rarely smiled, and his hoots were enough to make the bravest mouse tremble. "Well, why is he so mean to us?" Missy asked. Her big brown eyes filled with worry. "We never bother him. He thinks we're nosy," her mother explained. "He likes his naps, and our scurrying and chattering disturb him." Missy frowned. "But we're just trying to live our lives. We need to eat, play, and have fun." "You're right, Missy. We deserve to be happy. But we must be respectful of our neighbors." Missy thought for a moment. "What if we tried to make him happy?" Her mother's eyes twinkled. "Now that's a wonderful idea, Missy. Let's think." The next day, Missy and her mother gathered the tastiest cheese they could find. They tied a tiny bell to a long string and dangled it invitingly near Mr. Hoots' tree. When Mr. Hoots awoke, he was greeted by the sight of delicious cheese and the gentle tinkling of the bell. He grumbled, but the aroma of the cheese was irresistible. He cautiously approached the bell, pecking at it curiously. Suddenly, a small, sweet voice chirped. "Hello, Mr. Hoots. We made you a present." Mr. Hoots looked up to see Missy and her mother peeking out from behind a flower pot. He glared at them, but the cheese was calling. Slowly, he began to eat. As he munched, the tinkling of the bell continued, a cheerful melody in the afternoon air. Mr. Hoots found himself smiling. It wasn't a big smile, but it was a smile nonetheless. From that day on, Mr. Hoots was a little less grumpy. He still hooted occasionally, but his hoots were softer, and sometimes, when the moon was full, he would even give the little rats a friendly wink. Missy and her mother knew they had found a way to make peace with their grumpy neighbor, one delicious cheese at a time. Rusty's Big Lesson. In the heart of a lush forest, nestled within a cozy den, lived a mother fox named Flossie and her mischievous son, Rusty. Flossie was a wise and caring mother, always eager to guide Rusty through the intricacies of fox life. However, one particular lesson proved to be a bit of a challenge, teaching Rusty the importance of brushing his teeth. Rusty, being a young and energetic fox, often viewing brushing his teeth as a tedious chore. He'd much rather be exploring the forest, chasing squirrels, or playing with his friends, but Flossie was determined to instill good oral hygiene habits for her son, knowing that healthy teeth were essential for a fox's well-being. One sunny morning, Flossie decided to make brushing teeth a fun and exciting activity. She gathered a handful of berries and placed them on a nearby rock, creating a colorful trail leading to Rusty's toothbrush. "Rusty," Flossie called out playfully, "I've hidden a special treat for you. Follow the berry trail and you'll find it." Rusty's eyes lit up at the sight of the berries. He eagerly followed the trail, his nose twitching with excitement. As he reached the end of the trail, he found his toothbrush, adorned with a bright red berry. Flossie smiled, knowing she had captured Rusty's attention. "See, Rusty," she said, "brushing your teeth can lead to a wonderful reward." Rusty, still curious about the berry, carefully picked it up and popped it into his mouth. He savored the sweet taste, his eyes widening with delight. "Now let's brush those teeth and see what else we can find," Flossie suggested, handing Rusty his toothbrush. Rusty, eager to discover more treats, happily accepted the toothbrush. He mimicked his mother's movements, brushing his teeth with enthusiasm. Flossie watched with pride as Rusty brushed his teeth, his tail wagging with excitement. She knew that by making brushing teeth a fun and rewarding experience, she had instilled a lifelong habit in her son. From that day on, Rusty never complained about brushing his teeth. He looked forward to the daily adventure, the trail of berries, and the sweet reward that awaited him at the end. And Flossie, knowing her son's teeth were happy and healthy, felt a sense of contentment, knowing she had successfully guided Rusty through another important milestone in his young life. The best of both worlds. The sun shimmered on the surface of the pond, warming the lily pads where Josh, a plump toad with mischievous glint in his eye, basked. He puffed out his chest, admiring his reflection. "Harry," he croaked, "you wouldn't believe the life I live here. Imagine waking up to the gentle lapping of water, the sweet scent of blooming lilies, and the chorus of frogs serenading the dawn." Harry, a crab with a shell the color of gold, scuttled closer, his pincers clicking. "Sounds idyllic, Josh," he chuckled. "But our ocean is a symphony of its own. Imagine the crashing waves, swirling currents, the dazzling schools of fish flashing like thousands of tiny jewels." Josh blinked. "Schools of fish? We have a few tadpoles here, but nothing like that." Harry nodded. "And the creatures? Giant squid that could swallow you whole, playful dolphins leaping through the air, and those magnificent whales, with songs echoing for miles." Josh scoffed. "Whales? We have a grumpy heron who sometimes likes to snatch us. And the biggest creature we have is an old snapping turtle, and even he's mostly interested in basking." Harry laughed. "You should see our coral reefs. A whole underwater city of vibrant colors, teeming with life. You'll never be bored." Josh, intrigued, imagined a world of shimmering coral castles and hidden caves. "Well, what about the storms, Harry? The ocean must be terrifying when the storm hits." Harry shrugged. "We find shelter, of course, but even a storm has its beauty. The power of the waves, the wind howling, it's exhilarating. And afterwards the air is so fresh, the water so clear." Josh sighed contentedly. "Well, I wouldn't trade my peaceful pond for anything, but I must admit, the ocean sounds like a truly extraordinary place." Harry smiled. "And your pond, Josh, sounds like a haven of tranquility. Perhaps one day you could visit the ocean, and I could explore your peaceful little world." Josh, his eyes wide with excitement, knew this was an adventure he couldn't pass up. "I'd love that, Harry. I'd love that." And so, the two friends, so different in their homes, yet bound by friendship, dreamed of the day they would explore each other's worlds, expanding their horizons and discovering the wonders that lay beyond their own familiar shores. Nancy the Chipmunk. In the heart of a sprawling forest, nestled amongst towering trees and vibrant wildflowers, lived a tiny chipmunk named Nancy. Nancy was a cheerful and energetic creature, always busy scurrying about her burrow, collecting nuts and playing with her friends. However, there was one thing that constantly bothered Nancy: the endless supply of pine cones that seemed to invade her yard. Every morning, Nancy would wake up to find her yard littered with pine cones, as if they had fallen from the sky overnight. She would spend hours diligently collecting them, piling them into a neat little mound at the edge of her yard. But as soon as she finished, more pine cones would appear, as if it were magic. One day, Nancy decided to investigate the source of this never-ending supply of pine cones. She followed the trail of pine cones, which led her to a tall pine tree at the edge of the forest. As she climbed the tree, she discovered a group of mischievous squirrels playing a game of pinecone toss, their laughter echoing through the branches. Nancy realized that the squirrels were the ones responsible for the constant pinecone invasion. She approached them and explained how the pine cones were making her yard a mess. The squirrels, feeling a pang of guilt, apologized and promised to stop tossing pine cones into Nancy's yard. From that day on, Nancy's yard remained pinecone free. and she could finally enjoy her peaceful home without the constant worry of cleaning up after the mischievous squirrels. She learned that sometimes the simplest solutions can solve the biggest problems, and that a little understanding and communication can go a long way.
Sweet dreams, and thank you for listening.